In many people's eyes, Jamal Murray's season-ending injury put an end to Denver's championship aspirations. However, the Nuggets have gone 13-4 since Murray got hurt, and it seems like their confidence hasn't wavered at all. In their last 17 games, Denver is averaging 115 points while allowing just 109, and they also have a plus-minus of plus 6.6. A lot of fans might assume that Nikola Jokic is the main reason for this team staying afloat, and while he may be the biggest reason, he's not the only one. In today's video, I want to shed light on this Nuggets team as a whole and discuss the possibility of them making a championship run.
Murray, inside, incredible!
LeBron James with no regard for human life.
They do have a timeout, decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown, bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
When Jamal Murray went down, the concern was that Denver had lost its second best scorer and player. But in this stretch, Michael Porter Jr. has stepped up so much that I'm beginning to feel like he was the second best player on this team all along. He just wasn't getting the opportunity to show that. Since Murray went down, Porter has averaged 24.4 points and 6.3 rebounds, and he's doing so on incredible efficiency. What's been so impressive to me is his ability to score in so many different ways. As a 6'10 player with amazing touch, Porter can score in the mid-range and from the three-point line regardless of how much space he has to shoot. Michael Malone's offense also gets Porter coming off screens for jumpers or dives to the rim, and by playing next to a phenomenal passing big in Nikola Jokic, there is an incentive for him to cut hard to the rim for easy finishes. If he can continue to improve on his handle, as well as his ability to take defenders off the bounce and get to the free throw line, Michael Porter Jr. is going to be one of the toughest covers in the entire league. In addition to being a great scorer and rebounder, MPJ makes an impact on the defensive end as well. He's a disciplined defender that stays on his feet and uses his length to alter shots, he provides great help defense, and at his size he has the ability to guard multiple positions. He's not perfect on that end, sometimes he'll help off a shooter when he doesn't have to, or he'll get caught watching his man and lose sight of the ball, but he's already a good defender at just 22 years old, and he'll only get better with time. Looking at the rest of this roster, there hasn't been anyone else that has stepped up their game quite as much as Michael Porter has, but they've still gotten great contributions from many different players. Facu Campazzo has been a good 3-and-D point guard who makes hustle plays, chases down long rebounds, and really frustrates opposing point guards. Aaron Gordon has been a versatile defender that crashes the offensive and defensive boards, and Paul Millsap has been playing very well as a small ball 5. If I wanted to, I could talk about the contributions of every single player in the rotation, but I see more value in discussing the way they all play together. After rewatching some of their recent games, there are two major strengths of theirs that I want to highlight. The first one is nothing new as it was prevalent even before Murray's injury, but this team has great ball and player movement. Mike Malone deserves a lot of credit for this because his offense gets players moving and setting screens for one another, which ultimately puts the defense in a tough spot. It's not easy having to fight through screens all game, especially when the players you're chasing can't be given an inch of room to operate. I think it's also worth mentioning that Jokic is not the only person with playmaking ability on this team. Obviously he is the best passer on this team, but the Nuggets have players like Campazzo, Morris, Millsap, Gordon, and to a lesser degree Will Barton and JaMychal Green that can find the open man. This unselfish brand of basketball is hard to stop because the defense has to treat various players on this team as not only a threat to score, but to set up teammates as well. Moving on to the other side of the floor, Denver has really impressed me with their ability to protect the paint. The Nuggets rank in the top 10 in points allowed in the paint, and that's because they are great at providing help at the right time. A lot of people like to portray Jokic as this big, slow guy that can't play any defense, but he's actually one of the main reasons why Denver is able to stop teams near the bucket. He may not be the quickest or most athletic player, but he's a smart defender that uses his body and length to affect shots. He's also gotten in much better shape this year, which has helped him stay with players trying to get to the rim. On top of that, players such as Millsap, Green, and Porter are good at providing help defense in the paint, and JaVale McGee is also a nice rim protector that can come in the game for short bursts. Essentially, the Denver Nuggets are a team with an MVP caliber player, a rising star, a strong coaching staff, and an assortment of good solid players that play well together. They execute on both ends of the floor, and most importantly, this team has remained confident in themselves even with Jamal Murray going down. However, fans should not be indifferent towards Murray's injury because this team does have their problems, several of which Jamal Murray could really help rectify. First off, I want to talk about the weaknesses of this team on the defensive end. I mentioned that this team is good at protecting the paint because they have a number of lengthy, smart defenders that work well together, but the Nuggets are pretty mediocre when it comes to defending the three-point line. There are a few reasons for this being the case. Number one, there are times where they collapse too hard into the paint and leave a shooter open. 2, they have these mental lapses where they allow players to comfortably catch and shoot, and worst of all, they are terrible at getting back and preventing transition threes. The poor transition defense is a major issue because the effort Denver is putting into their half-court defense is essentially going to waste. Whether it's an inability to prevent leakouts from happening, a failure to communicate or stop the ball, or simply a lack of enthusiasm to get back in transition, the Nuggets have really struggled in this area. This is concerning because many of the teams they could match up with in the playoffs are great three-point shooting teams. The Nuggets may have to play teams like the Blazers, Jazz, or Clippers in order to get out of the West, and if they do make it out, there's a good chance they go up against the Nets or Bucks in the finals, two more elite three-point shooting teams that could cause the Nuggets problems. On the offensive end, the Nuggets have been playing well even without Murray, but I believe his presence will be sorely missed in the postseason. The playoffs are a different breed from the regular season, and it's extremely valuable to have players who step up their games come playoff time. In Denver's last 2 playoff appearances, Murray has elevated his game during both runs, and that's something that's hard to replace. I'm confident that Jokic and Porter will produce on the offensive end, but whenever we're looking at a team with 2 stars, we always ask ourselves who that third scorer is going to be. If the Nuggets had a healthy Jamal Murray this postseason, we wouldn't be asking that question in regard to this Nuggets team, and frankly, a trio of Michael Porter Jr., MVP Jokic, and playoff Murray would be extremely difficult to beat in a 7-game series. On top of that, Jamal's 2-man game with Jokic is something that Campazzo, Morris, Barton, and Rivers haven't been able to replicate, and it's a great element of their offense that is now missing. Another thing that Murray would be able to help this team with is three-point shooting. Over their last 17 games, Denver has shot just 35% from 3, but what makes it worse is the discrepancy between Michael Porter and the rest of the team. In this span, Porter has shot 48.8% from 3 on high volume, while everyone else has combined to shoot just 31.2% from outside. On the season, Jokic and JaMychal Green have hovered around 40% from 3, and there are a number of guys shooting in the mid to high 30s as well. The issue is that none of them are high-volume three-point shooters, so they are going to be relatively inconsistent. They do have a number of players that can hit outside shots, but besides Michael Porter Jr., there's no one else on this roster that defenses should be terrified of leaving open. Not having Murray in the lineup means that you're without a guard that shoots just under 41% from 3 on 6.6 attempts per game. A team is much more threatening when they have 2 elite shooters surrounded by a bunch of pretty good shooters, as opposed to only having 1. I guarantee there will be a game during the playoffs where Porter has a bad 3-point shooting night, and because no one else will be able to pick up that slack at a high volume, the Nuggets will lose a key game. The last thing that I want to quickly touch on is their free throw shooting or lack thereof. I honestly don't know if I can consider this a weakness of theirs, because a lot of times it feels like Denver is just not being repped properly, most notably Nikola Jokic. I find it pretty crazy that an MVP candidate, who has the ball in his hands all the time and who also averages 35 minutes per game, is only getting to the free throw line 5.5 times per game. Jokic has been getting upset with the refs for a little while now, and if you watch Denver play, you'll see that Jokic gets fouled quite a lot around the rim and no call gets made. In his last 11 games, Jokic has had 4 games of 10 plus free throws, but over the first 60 games of the season, he only had 6 games like this. Time will only tell if the refs revert to their old ways, but I think it's worth it to look out for the free throw discrepancies in their upcoming playoff run, because that could be the determining factor between them winning and losing a series. By and large, the Denver Nuggets are still a very threatening team even without Jamal Murray. Typically when a player of Murray's caliber goes down, it's expected that that team's record will be somewhat worse, but the Nuggets have continued to win games even without him. However, I don't agree with this notion that Denver is better without Murray. I just think this is an instance where a team learned something about itself that it didn't previously know. In this case, the Nuggets have learned just how good Michael Porter Jr. really is. Though it's been exciting to watch Denver recently, I don't see this team getting any further than the second round. As of now, they are the 3 seed, meaning that they'd match up with either the Suns or possibly even the Lakers in round 2. If the Nuggets finish as the 4 seed, they'd have to play Utah in the second round, and I think that would be a tough matchup for them as well. On top of that, it's not a guarantee that they beat the Blazers or Mavs in the first round anyways. In order to win the West this year, a team has to be at full strength, and while Denver is still a really good team, they have their weaknesses and they don't have Jamal Murray to help solve them. Even though I don't see them winning a ring this year, the Nuggets are still a relatively young team, and I'm very confident that they'll be NBA champions within the next few seasons.